The woman I loved with all my heart betrayed me. But I didn't sit quiet. I decided that if she broke me, I'd answer in her own coin. I set a plan in motion that tore down her pride, her relationship, even her career right before my eyes. Hear the whole story, how I made her pay for her betrayal step by step.
The first time I noticed something was off with Claire. It was so small, so ordinary, I almost brushed it aside. We'd been married 11 years, and after that much time, you expect little changes in behavior. People grow, routines shift, work gets busier. But that Tuesday evening in late September, the change hit me like a splinter under the skin. Tiny, but impossible to ignore once it's there. I had come home from the job site later than usual. Dust still clinging to my jeans, the smell of sawdust in my hair. Claire was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, a glass of red wine untouched beside her. Normally she'd greet me with at least a half smile or a quick, "Hey, you hungry?" But that night, she snapped the laptop shut so fast I could almost hear the keys groan. "Long day?" she asked, too casual. "Same as always," I said, tossing my keys into the bowl by the door. "What about you?" She shrugged, eyes flicking toward the laptop like a guilty teenager hiding a diary. "Work was fine, just catching up on emails." I didn't push it. After more than a decade together, you learn which battles are worth fighting. Still, as I headed to the fridge, I noticed her phone sitting face down on the table. Claire never left her phone screen down. Ever. She was the kind of person who kept it on silent, but still liked to see notifications pop up. Little details. Little cracks. I told myself not to dwell on it. We had our ups and downs, but we'd built a life together. Mortgage payments on a house just outside Providence. 2 kids in elementary school. A shared calendar that ran our lives more efficiently than any app could. Claire worked in digital marketing for a healthcare startup. I ran a mid-sized construction company I'd built from the ground up. She had the sharper degree, I had the rougher hands. But for years, it had balanced out just fine. That night, though, the balance felt tilted. Over the next few weeks, more splinters appeared. Claire started working later, claiming endless meetings or team strategy sessions that always seemed to run past dinner. She bought new clothes. Sleeker, more modern than the yoga pants and cozy sweaters she usually favored. Her perfume changed too. Not dramatically, but enough for me to notice when she slipped into bed after midnight smelling faintly of sandalwood and jasmine. One Saturday morning, I asked if she wanted to take the kids apple picking like we usually did every fall. She hesitated, then said she had too much work to do, maybe next weekend. The kids and I went alone. When we got back, she wasn't at the house. Her car was gone. No note, no explanation. When I asked about it later, she brushed it off. I just needed to clear my head. Went for a drive, grabbed a coffee. What's the big deal? The big deal was the lie. Claire hated coffee. She hadn't touched the stuff in years. By the time October rolled around, my gut told me the truth I didn't want to admit out loud. She was seeing someone else. I didn't confront her right away. Some men would have stormed into the kitchen and demanded answers, but I've always been more patient than that. Boxing taught me that back in high school, don't swing wild, wait for your opening. Let your opponent make the mistake. So I started paying closer attention. On Tuesday nights, she claimed she had strategy dinners with her team. I followed her once, keeping my truck a few cars behind her Lexus as she drove into the city. She parked 2 blocks from a high-rise condo complex I recognized immediately. The kind of luxury place with glass balconies and doormen in pressed uniforms. She didn't carry her laptop bag. She didn't look stressed from work. She looked excited. I watched her check her reflection in the side mirror, swipe on fresh lipstick, and head inside. She didn't come back out for 3 hours. When she finally did, she wasn't alone. A tall man in a navy suit walked her to her car. He kissed her on the cheek, lingered just a little too long, then smacked her rear playfully as she laughed and swatted at him. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. His name came to me a week later, courtesy of one of my foremen who had a brother working in finance downtown. Nathan Grant, early 40s, divorced, made a fortune developing real estate projects along the coast. The kind of guy who wore $500 shoes and talked about networking at cocktail parties. Claire had mentioned him once, months ago in passing. Nathan's company is investing in healthcare properties. Could be good for us long term. I'd barely paid attention at the time. Now I realized he wasn't just good for her career. He was the reason she'd stopped wearing her wedding ring to client meetings. I could have exploded right then. Packed her bags, screamed in her face, told the kids their mother had betrayed me. But instead I played it cool. Too cool, maybe. I smiled when she told me she had to work late. I kissed her cheek when she came home after midnight smelling of another man's cologne. I tucked our kids into bed, told them Mommy was busy, everything was fine. But inside I was building something. Not with bricks and lumber this time. With patience. With planning. With rage that had finally turned cold. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving dinner with my parents. Claire had insisted we host this year, even though she barely lifted a finger to help me prepare. My mom brought pies, my sister brought side dishes, and I cooked the turkey while Claire floated around the living room refilling wine glasses and telling stories about her amazing work projects. Halfway through the meal, my father, never one to mince words, leaned over and said, "So Claire, you two thinking about a third kid anytime soon? You've both done so well with the first two." The table went quiet. Claire laughed, high and sharp. "Oh God, no. Two's plenty. Besides, let's be honest, Colin's already stretched thin. Another baby would be a disaster." Everyone chuckled politely, but I felt the sting like a jab to the ribs. When she reached across the table to grab the gravy, I noticed her wedding ring was missing again. My mother noticed too. Her eyes flicked to mine, questioning. After dessert, while Claire was in the kitchen pretending to clean, my sister whispered, "Everything okay with you guys?" "Perfect," I said. "Too perfect." That night, when the guests had gone and the kids were asleep, Claire came into the bedroom smelling like Chardonnay and perfume. She tossed her earrings on the dresser and looked at me. "What's your problem tonight?" "You tell me." She blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me? You don't wear your ring anymore. You work late 3 nights a week. You think I don't notice?" Her expression shifted, fear first, then defiance. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" She folded her arms, her tone icy. "I'm not going to do this with you right now. I'm tired." She climbed into bed, turned away, and within minutes pretended to be asleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the plaster, every muscle in my body tense. That was the night I decided. If Claire wanted to humiliate me, if she wanted to gamble 11 years of marriage for a slick-haired developer with a fat bank account, fine. She could have him. But I wasn't going down quietly. I was going to make sure when the truth came out, and it would come out, it destroyed them both. The plan started small. Passwords, accounts. I checked our joint finances, the kids' college fund, the credit cards. I noticed subtle transfers, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, always marked as business expenses. But Claire didn't run a business. She was funneling money somewhere, probably to Nathan. I called my lawyer the next morning under the pretense of updating some contracts. Hypothetically, I asked, what happens if one spouse is moving joint funds without the other's consent? He sighed. Hypothetically? That's financial misconduct. Judges don't like it. Why, Colin? No reason, I lied. Just curious. After that, I started documenting. Every late night. Every missing ring. Every work dinner that turned into hours unaccounted for. I didn't confront Claire again. I let her dig her own grave. The kids noticed. One night my daughter, 9 years old and too perceptive for her own good, asked, "Why is Mommy gone so much?" I forced a smile. "She's busy with work, sweetheart. Do you miss her?" "Every day," I said, and meant it in ways my daughter couldn't understand. By early December, the lies piled higher than the snow in our driveway. Claire barely even tried to cover her tracks. One evening she came home humming a tune, cheeks flushed, lipstick smeared at the corners. She kissed me on the cheek like we were roommates and went upstairs to shower. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the condensation on my beer bottle, thinking about how much longer I could play dumb. That was when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Claire and Nathan, his hand on her hip, her head tilted back in laughter, both of them standing on the balcony of his condo. Underneath, the message read, "Thought you should know." I stared at the screen for a long time. Whoever had sent it remained anonymous, but that didn't matter. Proof had finally landed in my hands. And suddenly, the cold voice inside me, the one I'd been keeping on ice for weeks, started speaking louder. It told me this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about payback.
The text with the photo stayed on my screen for nearly an hour, while I sat motionless in the kitchen. I turned it over in my mind again and again, trying to figure out who had sent it. A friend? An enemy? Someone in Nathan's orbit who wanted to stir the pot? It didn't matter. Proof was proof. The front door creaked open. Claire walked in, a paper bag of takeout in her hands, humming softly. She glanced at me sitting at the table and froze for half a second before forcing a smile. "Thai food," she said, holding the bag up. "Figured you didn't want to cook tonight." She set the bag on the counter, kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong, and started pulling out cartons. My phone was still on the table, face up, the damning photo glaring like a neon sign. She didn't see it. I studied her, really studied her, the way her hair was tucked behind one ear, the faint red mark on her neck that wasn't from me, the energy in her step like a teenager sneaking back after curfew. She looked happy. Too happy. I ate the pad thai she spooned onto my plate and listened as she chattered about work, some campaign launch, some new investor who was really going to change things. She didn't notice how quiet I was. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. That night, while she slept with her back to me, I sat in the living room scrolling through the photo again. The anonymous text had given me more than proof. It had given me leverage. The next morning I called Nate, my oldest friend and the guy I trusted most on my crew. Nate was the kind of man who looked like he belonged on a football field. 6'2", shoulders like a dock worker, hands calloused from years of construction. He was also sharp, sharper than most people gave him credit for. "Need a favor," I said when he answered. "You sound like hell." "What's up?" "I need everything you can find on Nathan Grant, the dirtier the better." He whistled. "That fancy developer guy, why?" "Because he's sleeping with my wife." A pause. Then say no more. "Give me a few days." I hung up and stared out at the frost creeping across the lawn. The air tasted sharper than it had yesterday, like I'd crossed into a different season of my life without even noticing. For the next 3 days, I played the role of dutiful husband. I drove the kids to school, made dinners, helped with homework. Claire floated in and out, laughing at texts she never showed me, slipping away for late-night meetings. I kept my mouth shut, kept my face neutral, and waited. By Friday, Nate showed up at my job site with a thick envelope. We sat in my truck, heater blasting, while he laid it all out. "Your boy Grant is dirtier than a septic tank," he said. "Got building code violations covered up with bribes. Couple harassment complaints swept under the rug. He's got a habit of mixing business with pleasure, if you know what I mean. Real estate deals tied to shell companies, shady investors from out of state, probably laundering money. Nothing the FBI could nail him on yet, but enough to torch his reputation." I flipped through the papers, emails, photocopies of property records, even blurry photos of Nathan leaving bars with women who weren't my wife. My pulse steadied. Information was power, and I finally had some. "You want me to dig deeper?" Nate asked. I shook my head. "This is plenty. Now we wait for the right time to use it." That weekend, Claire claimed she had to fly to Chicago for a conference. I helped her pack, even loaded her suitcase into the Lexus. She kissed me goodbye, thanked me for being so understanding. The second she was gone, I called her airline. No ticket under her name. No flight booked. She wasn't in Chicago. She was with him. I didn't lose my temper. Instead, I took the kids to my parents' house for the weekend, told them Grandma had been missing them. While they baked cookies and played board games, I drove back home alone, poured myself a bourbon, and spread Nate's papers across the dining room table. Every line of text, every photo, every receipt was another nail in Nathan Grant's coffin. Claire thought she was trading up, leaving me for a man with more money, more flash. She didn't realize she was building her future on a foundation of rot. By Sunday night, I had an outline in my head. Step 1, lock down finances. Step 2, gather witnesses. Step 3, make sure when the story broke, it hit them both so hard there was no recovery. Monday morning, I called my lawyer. "Jim, I need to freeze the joint accounts." He sighed. "Colin, we talked about this before." "Are you certain?" "More certain than I've ever been." She's transferring money. I've got proof she's not where she says she is. Lock it down before she drains it. All right. I'll file emergency paperwork today. Good, and one more thing. Start drafting divorce papers. The silence on the line was heavy. Then Jim said, "Understood." That afternoon, I stopped by the school to pick up the kids early. I told the office we had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie, not really. I brought them home, sat them at the kitchen table, and said, "Mommy and Daddy are going through some tough stuff right now. But I want you to know it's not your fault and I'll always be here for you." They looked confused, worried. My daughter's eyes watered. My son asked if Mommy was moving out. I couldn't answer yet, but I hugged them both tighter than I had in weeks. Claire came home Tuesday evening, suitcase rolling behind her. She looked radiant, refreshed. She dropped the suitcase in the hallway and kissed my cheek like everything was normal. "How was Chicago?" I asked. "Oh, busy. Meetings all day. Panels, networking events." She rattled it off so smoothly it almost sounded real. Almost. I nodded, kept my face blank. "Glad you're back." For the next few days, I let her believe her lies were working. I cooked her favorite meals. I massaged her shoulders when she claimed to be exhausted. I played the fool so well, even she seemed convinced. But under the surface, the plan was tightening like a noose. The real break came courtesy of Lydia, a bartender I knew from Murphy's downtown. I'd done some repair work on her building years ago and we'd stayed friendly. One night I stopped by the bar, ordered a beer, and casually mentioned Nathan's name. Lydia snorted. "That guy's here every Tuesday. Different woman each time. Thinks he's God's gift. Every Tuesday? Without fail. Shows up around 7, orders top-shelf whiskey, brags about his deals, then disappears upstairs with whoever he's brought." "You ever see him with Claire?" Her eyes flickered. She leaned closer. "More than once. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, Colin, but yeah. She's been here with him, cozy as can be." My jaw tightened. I finished my beer, thanked her, and left without another word. Back home, Claire was sitting on the couch scrolling her phone. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, how was your night?" "Fine," I said. And for the first time, I realized how easy lying could be. The next week was a blur of preparations. Nate gathered written statements from anyone who'd seen Claire and Nathan together. Lydia, a couple of guys from the gym, even one of my own crew who'd spotted them at a hotel bar. Jim worked overtime filing motions, making sure Claire couldn't touch the house, the business, or the kids' college fund. Every move tightened the walls around her, though she didn't know it yet. Then came the night everything cracked open. It was a Friday. Claire claimed she was going out with the girls for drinks. She dressed in a black dress I'd never seen before, heels that made her legs look a mile long. She looked in the mirror, sprayed perfume, and grabbed her clutch. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked. I smiled. "Of course not." "Have fun." She kissed my cheek and left. 10 minutes later, I followed. Sure enough, her Lexus was parked 2 blocks from Nathan's condo. I sat in my truck across the street watching her hurry inside. A part of me wanted to storm up there, pound on the door, drag her out by the wrist. But the colder part of me, the part that had been planning this for weeks, kept me still. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, I saw them through the glass balcony doors on the 12th floor. Claire and Nathan, drinks in hand, laughing like they hadn't a care in the world. She leaned into him and he kissed her full on the mouth. My phone buzzed again. Another message from that unknown number. This time it was a video. Claire and Nathan walking into the building lobby hand in hand. Time-stamped. From just 15 minutes earlier. The text read, "Thought you'd want more proof." I sat back, heart-pounding rage and satisfaction warring inside me. Whoever my anonymous helper was, they were making my job easier. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I drove home, poured myself another bourbon, and started writing down every detail in a notebook. Dates, times, locations. By the time I finished, I had 10 pages of evidence. Enough to burn her life to the ground if I wanted. When Claire finally stumbled in at 2 a.m., hair mussed, lipstick faded, she whispered, "Sorry, I'm late." We lost track of time. "Don't worry about it," I said calmly. "Get some sleep." She smiled, kissed me on the forehead, and fell into bed. I sat awake until sunrise, staring at her sleeping form, thinking about how someone could betray the person who'd built a life with them, how someone could toss away loyalty for lust, stability for excitement. By dawn, I had made my decision. It was no longer about saving the marriage. It was about revenge, and the first move was coming sooner than she thought. After I decided to take action, my life became about careful planning. Every step was controlled, like following a script. I wanted things precise, not messy. I wanted their reputations to break slowly until nothing was left except the two people who betrayed me. Jim handled most of the legal work. He filed temporary restraining orders, sent bank notices, and started the divorce. He warned me that courts do not like husbands who lock wives out or change evidence. I listened carefully. I did not want my anger to cause problems. Everything had to be perfect. While Jim worked openly, Nate and I worked quietly. Nate's contacts found witnesses who had seen Nathan with other women. They signed statements. Lydia wrote about what she saw at her bar. A former planning clerk, who had once accepted hush money, agreed to speak about favors Nathan made for permits. It was not glamorous, but it gave strong proof that was difficult to deny. I also spoke to a journalist, Isabel Hart. She was in her 30s and fearless. I gave her enough information to start an investigation. She asked questions I had not thought of. Who benefits from Nathan's projects? Who owns the shell companies? Where do the payments come from? I helped her, following Jim's advice and staying careful. Meanwhile, Claire acted innocent. She moved through our home like a visitor. She touched things she had owned for years as if seeing them new. She hid phone notifications so I could not see them. She smiled more. She bought small gifts and left receipts to show she was careful. Her calmness made me upset. One Thursday, Isabel texted me. She had a lead, a contractor who worked on Nathan's projects. He mentioned strange payments and invoices that did not match. He said men in suits sometimes paid in cash. He was worried, but wanted to speak. Isabel asked if I could arrange a meeting. I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe away from Nathan's usual places. The contractor, Marco, was wiry and focused. He handed Isabel an envelope with invoices and bank notices. Alone, the papers looked ordinary. Together, they told a clear story. Isabel said she would publish in a week unless legally stopped. That night I came home. Claire sat at the kitchen table with a folder. She smiled as if everything was under control. I had a meeting today. Investors love the projections. You should be proud, she said softly. I stayed calm. I poured 2 glasses of wine and sat down. I could feel the pieces falling into place. One push, and everything would move as I planned. The push came by mistake. An email from Nathan's accountant went to Isabel's personal address instead of a corporate one. The email had spreadsheets that did not match official records. It showed transfers to shell companies. Isabel called, excited. This is it. This connects them to the money, she said. She wrote her article carefully. She explained the shell companies, the payments, and city decisions that helped Nathan's projects. She quoted Marco, Lydia, and the former planning clerk. The article went live on Tuesday and spread quickly. By midday, Nathan's name was on every local feed. Claire read the article at 9:30 on our couch, wearing a robe. She had a spoon in her hand. Her face changed from calm to worried. She searched for a way to clear herself. She did not find one. By afternoon, Nathan reacted. He called Claire, Isabel, and others. He threatened legal action and suggested rivals were to blame. But the documents were public. People who had only whispered began to speak out. Claire tried to stay composed. She posted a vague message on LinkedIn. HR at her company called her into a meeting. Investors became cautious. Nathan's carefully built image began to lose support. I stayed calm for my family, told them everything would be okay. They did not need explanations. Only my presence being with them kept me steady. Nathan tried to influence witnesses. He contacted Marco and Lydia. He hired lawyers to send formal warnings. He was cornered, but still had resources. Then I started getting messages and Alerts. There were warnings and anonymous notes. For hours, tension built. For a while, it felt like everything could collapse. I called Nate. He suggested improving home security. Jim recommended documenting everything and sharing threats with the police. Isabel suggested a follow-up story about how people were affected. I followed all of those steps. Then Claire reached out to me. First a text. "Are you okay?" Then another. "Can we talk?" I ignored her for days. When I replied, I wrote only, "Not here. Not now." She came to my shop the next morning. "Colin, they are trying to ruin me." "I did not do anything illegal," she said quietly. "Would you hide the truth from me?" I asked. "No," she replied, "but I did not think this would happen." "That is not enough," I said. "Did you know about the shell companies, the invoices, or the hush payments?" "No," she answered. "I knew Nathan was ambitious. He helped me and introduced me to people. I did not sign anything. I did not hide money." "Then tell the truth." I said, "I'm telling the truth." "Please, we can fix this," she said, nervous and sincere. For a moment I saw the person I once trusted, but the evidence was out. The city was paying attention. I had to continue with the plan. "So what now?" she asked. "You tell the truth," I said. She looked afraid. "You think I can just say that? They will react badly," she said. "Then tell the people who matter," I said. "Tell investors, HR, and the reporter. Cooperate. Stop acting like a victim when you are part of the story." She went quiet and then slowly nodded. "I will think about it," she said. That small change was all I needed. If she cooperated, the damage might be limited. If she did not, I would escalate until it could not be ignored. The next weeks were full of hearings, interviews, and late-night calls. Nathan hired experienced lawyers. Claire moved between remorse and careful planning. I watched life rearrange around the break in our lives. Friends chose sides. The tension reached into daily routines. Inside, I held on to the parts of me that mattered most. I was still a father, a builder, and a protector. I was not proud of every choice. Sometimes late at night I wondered if I had gone too far. But strategy, not emotion, kept my family safe. 2 months later, the state investigator called and subpoenas were coming. Nathan's digital records had gaps. Insiders at the firm started to talk. The city council scheduled a hearing. The story would not die quietly. When Claire heard the news, she broke down at home at 3 a.m. She cried about shame, fear, and regret. "I did not think it would hurt anyone," she said. "How long have you trusted him?" I asked quietly. "I do not know," she said, mascara streaking, "longer than I should, since the first dinner he paid for, since the night I felt seen." That admission changed something. It was not forgiveness. It was a beginning. Outside, people began to realize that powerful people can make mistakes. Inside, my life was part courtroom, part newsroom, and part home. The outcome was uncertain, like a distant storm. But the path forward was clear. At dawn, I sat at my desk. The kids' drawings were pinned above my plans. I made a list of truths to tell, and people to call and steps to take. It was long and messy, but it was mine. That morning I got a short text. It said, "Are you ready?" The number was unknown. I looked at my list and the mess in the middle of our life. For the first time since the laughter at Murphy's, I felt steady. I typed back, "Yes." I hit send and waited for the next move. The final weeks felt like the last rounds of a long fight. Every punch thrown with less energy, every breath harder, but the finish line finally visible. My life had become a strange mix of silence and noise. Silence in the house, where Claire and I rarely spoke more than necessary, and noise outside, where reporters circled Nathan like vultures around a carcass. The city council hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday evening. Cameras lined the marble steps like sentinels. Inside, people buzzed like it was a sporting event. Nathan arrived in a tailored suit, jaw tight, his usual arrogance dulled by exhaustion. Claire sat 3 rows back, head down, shoulders squared, trying to look invisible. I took a seat behind her, not to intimidate, but because I wanted to see it all play out. The hearing was brutal. Council members asked questions that sliced open every corner of Nathan's empire. Permits, inspections, unexplained cash transfers, shell companies, the harassment complaints. Everything I'd spent weeks collecting was laid out like a crime scene. Nathan denied, twisted, redirected. But for every denial, there was a document. For every redirect, a witness. When Lydia testified, her voice steady and her eyes clear, Nathan looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. When Marco spoke, holding up copies of fake invoices, Nathan clenched his jaw so hard the tendons in his neck bulged. By the end, the council voted unanimously to open a full investigation and suspend all pending approvals for Nathan's projects. The room erupted, some in applause, others in outrage. Nathan stormed out, reporters chasing him down the steps. Claire stayed in her seat long after the room emptied, staring at the ground. I walked past her without a word. That night, she came home late. She stood in the doorway of our bedroom, while I sat on the edge of the bed pulling off my boots. Her face was pale, her lipstick smudged. "You did this," she said quietly. I looked up. "No, he did this to himself." "You just helped him." She flinched like I'd struck her. For a moment I thought she might throw something, scream, let the rage out. But instead she lowered her gaze, whispered, "I'm sorry," and walked out. It was the first time she'd apologized since everything began. But it was too late. The investigation dragged on for weeks. Nathan was stripped of contracts, investors fled, and lawsuits piled up. He sold off properties at a loss to cover legal fees. His name, once plastered across billboards and glossy brochures, became shorthand for greed and corruption. Claire's career didn't escape the fallout. Her company distanced themselves from her, quietly demoting her, then offering a severance package that was more dismissal than reward. Her professional network, once her crown jewel, stopped returning calls. She spent long hours at home in silence, scrolling through job boards, sipping wine earlier each day. I focused on the kids. Baseball games, school projects, bedtime stories. They became the anchor in the storm. They didn't need to know the full details, only that their parents were separating and that no matter what, they'd always be loved. The day we told them was the hardest of all. We sat on the living room couch side by side like actors in a tragic play. Claire's hands trembled. I kept my voice steady. "Mommy and Daddy aren't going to live together anymore," I said gently. "But you'll have 2 homes now, and both of us will always be here for you." My daughter cried. My son stared at the carpet, silent, his small fists clenched. I pulled them close, held them, let them cry. Claire cried too. For a brief moment it felt like the family we once were, huddled together against the world. But the illusion faded as quickly as it came. The divorce moved quickly. Jim had prepared everything. Custody arrangements, property division, finances, all laid out in black and white. Claire contested at first, tried to push for more, but the evidence of her betrayal, the frozen accounts, and her ties to Nathan's scandal left her with little leverage. In the end, she settled. The house became mine. She moved into a small condo across town, bare and impersonal. The kids visited every other weekend. They never seemed fully comfortable there, too sterile, too quiet. I never said a word about it to them. I didn't want to poison their relationship with her, but I could see it in their eyes. As for Nathan, he disappeared from public life. The last I heard, he'd filed for bankruptcy, facing multiple lawsuits and a looming federal investigation. His luxury condo went on the market. His cars, his art, his company, all liquidated. The man who had once strutted through restaurants with my wife on his arm now avoided the very city he'd once tried to own. I should have felt triumphant. In many ways I did. Justice had been served, reputations ruined, the truth dragged into daylight. But victory is a strange thing. It doesn't taste as sweet as you imagine. It lingers, bitter, heavy, reminding you of everything you lost along the way. One evening, months later, Claire called. Her voice was small, uncertain. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then agreed. She came over after the kids were asleep. She looked older somehow, like the past year had drained years from her. She sat at the table where we'd once shared countless dinners and folded her hands like a child waiting for permission to speak. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she whispered. Not just for the affair. For everything. For lying, for hurting you, for hurting the kids. I was stupid. I thought I was chasing something better. I wasn't, I was blind. Her eyes filled with tears. You didn't deserve any of this. I stared at her, searching for anger, but all I felt was emptiness. The well of rage I'd carried for so long had dried up. What remained was something quieter, sadness, resignation. I loved you, I said simply. With everything I had. You threw it away. She nodded, tears streaming silently. I know. We sat in silence for a long time. There was no yelling, no dramatic ending. Just two people who had shared a life, now divided by choices that couldn't be undone. When she left, she kissed the kids goodnight and walked out the door without looking back. I knew in that moment that chapter was over. Life after was quieter, simpler. I poured myself into work, into the kids, into rebuilding the pieces of who I was before everything shattered. I took them camping, something we'd never done before. I let them paint their rooms however they wanted. I taught my son how to throw a curveball and watched my daughter perform in her first school play. There were lonely nights, yes. Nights where the bed felt too big, where the house echoed with memories. But there were also mornings filled with laughter, afternoons spent at the park, evenings where I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Revenge had given me justice, but it hadn't given me peace. That part I realized I had to build myself. Months later, I received one final anonymous message, the same number that had first sent me the photo. It was short. Told you the truth always comes out. I stared at the screen for a long time, wondering who it had been all along. A friend of Nathan's, an enemy? Someone with their own score to settle? In the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that they'd given me the spark to see what was always there. I deleted the message, set the phone down, and looked out at the backyard where my kids were chasing fireflies in the summer dusk. Their laughter floated through the air, pure and unbroken. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man consumed by betrayal or revenge. I felt like a father, steady and whole, standing at the edge of a future I could finally shape on my own terms. And that, I realized, was the real ending. Not the ruin of Nathan, not the downfall of Claire, but the beginning of something better, something honest, something mine. The storm had passed. The air was clear, and I was still standing.